Silence is one of those disciplines that we don't often practice. We're fairly familiar with prayer and with reading our Bibles and stuff like that, but if we only ever pray and we never stop to listen, we're missing out on half of the relationship with God. So I encourage you that take some time throughout this week. It can be uncomfortable at first, especially for people like Carl and I who like to talk a lot, and other people are much better at silence, right, Crystal? But it's a good discipline to sort of take time and practice. So we're moving on in our in our sermon series. Let me tell you about my best friend from the book of John. And so I'm going to focus on John 8 and 9 this week. There's a few stories that we're going to kind of go through and just see what we can learn from those. So the first story in John chapter 8 is about the woman caught in adultery. Just so you know, if you look in your Bible, you'll see that this section is kind of in brackets, and that's because it wasn't in some of the very earliest transcripts that they've found of the book of John, but it's accurate enough to the time that they've decided to put it in our Bible with just that little footnote. So you might remember from last week, things have kind of changed for Jesus now. Before, everyone loved him and adored him, and they were everywhere. And then there has been this shift now with the Pharisees and the leaders being against him. And they're looking for a reason. They're actually now plotting to try and kill him. So we're coming to the end. So the story of the woman caught in adultery is a trap that's been set for him by the Pharisees. In John 8, 3-6, it says, "The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. And placing her in the midst, they said to him, 'Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. So what do you say?' This, they said, so to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him." And it's interesting because they want to kind of trap Jesus in the law, and then they can accuse him of something. But Jesus, he doesn't play their game. He's not going to be outwitted by the Pharisees. So Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." And once more he bent down and he wrote on the ground. So he's not arguing with them, he's not whatever, he just puts this challenge up to them. All right, she's caught in adultery, according to the law, she gets to be stoned, which is, it's interesting that she's caught in adultery, which means that she's been given up. They've walked in on her and they've brought her here. Interesting, the man is not actually with her, but that's a different thing altogether. So he's like, "Oh, you're right. Okay, so she's caught in sin. Whichever one of you has never sinned, you go ahead, chuck the first stone at her." It goes on to say, "But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up and said to her, 'Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?' And she said, 'No one, Lord.' And Jesus said, 'Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on sin no more.'" See, Jesus is compassionate, but he is not lenient. See, it's not good to commit adultery. It hurts. Sin destroys, and it hurts us. So Jesus didn't say to her, "Oh, no one else is accusing you? Go ahead and carry on with your life, and, you're free to go now." He had compassion on her, and he said, "I'm not going to hold you accountable for this sin right now, but you got to stop sinning. You got to stop doing the things that are hurtful." So when we encounter sin in other people, we need to show compassion first. But, and this is the part we don't really like to do, we actually need to start to challenge them. Is that healthy for you? Is that adding to your life? Is that making things better, the sin that you're engaging in? Or is it actually hurtful? Is it actually destroying your life in some way? And again, we say it with compassion, we say it with love, and then we're saying it like Jesus says it. So Jesus is compassionate, but he's not lenient. We keep going in John 8, and it says, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. So Jesus is now, they're looking for him, and he's kind of a crafty guy. So he snuck into the temple when they weren't looking, and he starts teaching in the temple. In John 8:12, it says, again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So light illuminates. Genuine life by which truth and falsehood can be distinguished. That's what Jesus is. He's the genuine light. He will shine things on you, and he will show you what is true, and he will show you what is false when you let him work in your life. And light guides us, and it directs us, and it shows us where we can go and where we couldn't go, where we shouldn't go. So Derek and I were away on a very romantic weekend at the couples resort, and I had to get up to do something, and it was dark in the room, and I came back, and I stubbed my toe, and that was gross, and nails bent, and blood everywhere, because I was in an unfamiliar place, and I was in the dark. And if all I had done was just flicked on a tiny little light, then my toe would not hurt so bad, but it's better now, so it's okay. But we need the light. We need the light to guide us. We need the light to show us where to go. John 8:31-36 said, so Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. They answered him, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son remains forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Again, the Jews they were focused on the material realm. They were focused on the whole, we're children of Abraham. Apparently they forgot that whole 400 years in Egypt slavery thing. But they're like, we're not slaves, we're free people. What do you mean that you will set us free? And again, Jesus is looking at it from a spiritual point of view. And he's saying sin enslaves, because every act of disobedience to God creates an atmosphere of alienation and a trend to further disobedience that inevitably makes escape impossible. The more we give in to our sin, the more we allow sin to have a place in our life, the less actual freedom we have. And it's really interesting because sometimes we get this idea of it's not fair. I want to be able to do all the things the people in the world do. I want to be able to, drink what I want, eat what I want, watch what I want, say what I want, all of those kinds of things. I want to be free to do all those things. But the reality is, when those things that we want to do are sin, it doesn't lead to freedom. It actually leads to death. Jesus is the light and the truth that leads to our freedom. There's no way for us to save ourselves from sin. Thank goodness. It's not on us. There's no way for us to save ourselves from our sin, because if I had to save myself from my sin, I would be in a lot of trouble. Because sometimes I like my sin, Sometimes I'm like, it's really comfortable to eat this entire bag of Oreos when nobody's looking, because it's just me here, and And Jolene's got these Girl Guide cookies stashed somewhere in our church, which boxes keep disappearing somehow. I don't know about that. But am I really, honoring my temple when I eat kind of a lot of Girl Guide cookies? No. But thankfully, I can access help from the Holy Spirit through Jesus, because he wants me to live a life of health. And he wants me to live a life of truth. And he wants me to live a life that honors him. So only the Holy Spirit can help us with not sinning when we accept Christ. They go on in this chapter, and now the people are like, who do you think you are? And so they're trying to figure out who this Jesus really thinks he is. So John 8:53-58 says, "Are you greater than our father Abraham, who died? And the prophets died? Who do you make yourself out to be? Jesus answered, "If I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you say he is our God. But you have not known him. I know him. For if I were to say that I do not know him, I would be a liar like you. But I do know him, and I keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it and was glad." So the Jews said to him, "You are not yet 50 years old. How have you seen Abraham?" Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am." See, the Jews thought that they were safe because they were Abraham's descendants. They're part of that chosen people. They're part of God's people. And Jesus is now coming to them with a very difficult saying, I'm the Son of God. That's what John really wants us to know. Jesus is the Son of God, and he is saying he was with the Father. And this is blasphemy in the Jewish tradition, right? Like, you cannot, you do not go around saying you're God. And Jesus is saying, no, I am God. And he uses the same title that God used when he was speaking with Moses, when Moses asked, if the Israelites ask me who you are, who should I say you are? And he said, tell them I am. See, they don't understand that Jesus is the fulfillment of the covenant that Abraham made with the Israelite people. And that if they don't believe in him, that they're actually losing out on that covenantal promise that God gave. So Jesus has to explain to them that, yes, you're putting on all your trust in Abraham. You're putting all your trust in who you are and in your descendant, in your lineage and your forefathers. But Jesus is from before Abraham. And Abraham was looking to the day when Jesus would be born. So John makes sure that we recognize that Jesus is God and has existed from all time. Jesus cares more about our relationship with him than about our lineage and our deeds. You can't earn your way into the kingdom by following all the rules and doing all the things, which is how the Jews had been functioning for hundreds of years. And it doesn't matter who your father is or who your mother is or where you come from. It's actually you. You personally have to have a relationship with Jesus. It's funny, I'm taking this course right now called Rule of Life. And it's for pastors, and it's about how do we keep ourselves spiritually in tune with God when we're so busy in our North American culture. And so I met with my spiritual director a week and a half ago or something. So one of the things he asked me to do was to list the 5 negative things in my life and then 5 positive things in my life, spiritual highlights of my life, right? And so one of my negative things was I kind of grew up in a bit of a legalistic church where because I didn't wear the floral print dresses, you've probably heard me say this before, didn't really fit in. And so at the age of 19, I had become a Christian and I had a saving knowledge of Christ. But at about 19, I was like, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to go try it on my own. And let's just say on my own, not a great plan. And at 21, I was out west in BC, and I felt like God just was like, okay, enough of playing church on Sunday and going out, hanging out on Saturday nights. It's time for you to make a choice. This is the whole, I will spit you out of your lukewarm. It's time for you to make a choice. And so I said, okay, Lord, here's my steaming pile of garbage that I have made. And from now on, I'm going to let you be Lord of my life. Because it wasn't about a prayer that I had said when I was 10 years old. And it wasn't about what my parents were doing and all the good things they were doing. It was about would I choose personally to have a relationship with the God that loves me so much, he won't let me stay in my sin. Would I choose to say, okay, Lord, I've made a mess here, but you are the God of mercy and redemption, and you're amazing. And so from that time on, and let's be clear, I don't always get it right, but at least I always know who I'm trying to follow and who I'm trying to be like. So Jesus cares more about our relationship with him than he does about our lineage and our deeds. In chapter 9, this whole chapter in chapter 9 is this story of a man born blind. So John 9, 1-3 says, as he passed by, this is Jesus, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. And it's interesting, this was not a question of compassion that the disciples were answering. They had been told that if you were blind, if you were lame, if there was something bad that had happened in your life, that was the result of sin. So if you were born blind, then obviously it was your parents that sinned because you didn't have that opportunity to sin yet. And Jesus is now turning that on its head. And he's saying that no, nobody has sinned here. This man was born blind so that God could so that the works of God would be displayed in him. You know, sometimes we suffer the consequences for our own sins, right? Like we do bad stuff happens to us, we know why it happens. And sometimes, unfortunately, we can suffer the consequences of other people's sins. Other people do things that aren't right, and we are the collateral damage of that. But sometimes we cannot figure out why this is happening to us, or we can't figure out why we're being affected by something that's going on in our lives. But really, if we will say, Lord, I don't understand why this is happening, but I want you to take this broken part or this hurt part, and I want you to use it for your glory. This will give Jesus the opportunity to work in us. So Jesus healed on the Sabbath, which was a bad thing. So he does this amazing thing, and then he's rejected. John 9:18, let me read this first. The Jews did not believe that he had been born blind and had received his sight. This is the man. Until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, is this your son who you saw, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age. He will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, he is of age, ask him. So for the second time they called the man who had been blind, and said to him, give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered, whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. They said to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear again? Do you also want to become his disciples? He's a little bit sarcastic. So here, Jesus, he's healed on the Sabbath again, which is against the rules, which we think is pretty ridiculous, right? Like, blind man, Sabbath, no working? What's going on here, right? And so, but they're looking for something to accuse him of, obviously, right? So they're trying to trap him in this thing. So they go to the parents of the blind man. They ask the blind man, and he's like, you know what? I was just sitting around, minding my own business, and Jesus came up to me. He put a little bit of mud on my eyes, and now I can see. And he actually didn't even know it was Jesus. Some guy comes up to me, puts some mud on my face, and now I can see, and now you're all freaking out because I got healed on the Sabbath. And so they go to his parents, and his parents, here's the thing, his parents don't want to risk being ostracized. They don't want to risk being thrown out of their community. That's a pretty big thing. You know, one of the things I'm hoping for is that our church will grow by people coming to know Jesus in our community. But that's going to be difficult for some people because people who come from a different culture or a different religion or something they're risking being rejected by where they're coming from. And so as a church, we need to make sure that we welcome them in and that we accept them and that we make a place for them because it's going to be difficult. The parents did not want to lose their place in society by confessing Jesus. So now this guy's like, look, you asked me, I told you, what do you want to know? Are you doing this so that you can follow him? See, the Pharisees were unwilling to be taught by an illiterate man, a broken man, a sinful man who was blind. They were unwilling to put aside their pride and to hear a testimony of what God had done. But Jesus accepts us when others reject us. John 9:35-37 says, Jesus heard that they had cast him out. And having found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? He answered, and who is he, sir, that I may believe? Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. His people rejected him. His leaders rejected him. But Jesus came along and said, if you believe in me, come into relationship with me. Believing in Jesus may cause us to be rejected by even our own families sometimes. But we have a place in Jesus, a safe place in Jesus. And we are still called to worship him. See, Jesus is the answer when life does not make sense. Jesus is the answer when we're feeling rejected or when we're feeling hurt or when we're feeling cast out. Jesus is the answer when life doesn't make sense. See, he was born blind, but when his blindness was healed, spiritual light was revealed to him. When we worship Jesus, he takes our lives and he uses it for his glory. I want us to break up now. We're going to have a quick discussion, and then we're going to, really quick discussion, and then we're going to go eat some food. But I just want us to talk. So our discussion question is, how can we model Jesus' compassion and truth to those around us who may feel like life does not make sense? How can we model Jesus' compassion and truth to those around us who may feel like life does not make sense. So let's get up, let's move, let's make sure nobody is alone, and maybe groups of 4 or 5. We're going to take 5 minutes, then we're going to close, and then we're going to eat. All right. Hopefully you had some good discussions. We're going to be invaded by the children in 1 minute. The bigger children, not the babies. All right. So, just to summarize, this is what John wants you to know about Jesus this week. Jesus is compassionate but not lenient. Jesus is the light and the truth that leads to freedom. Jesus cares more about our relationship with him than our lineage and our deeds. And Jesus is the answer when life does not make sense.